We're getting real close.
Getting there. It's creeping up on us.
And there it is. So, good morning and welcome everyone to the Monterey Salinas Transit District Board Operations Performance Committee meeting. And it is, this meeting is being held in person, and the meeting may be attended via public participation via Zoom. If via Zoom, so the meeting ID code is 84500836234 and passcode is 652252. Or you may attend by telephone by dialing 669-900-6833 with the same meeting ID code and passcode. The passcode is 652252. Public comments may be made either in person or via Zoom or email. Warning to public speakers. MST is committed to civility and it is mindful of its responsibility to protect the work environment. To ensure civility in its public meetings, the public is encouraged to engage in respectful dialogue that supports freedom of speech and values diversity of opinion. Failure to engage in respectful dialogue will forfeit the speaker's right to participate in public comment. Members of the public may attend the meeting via in person and may also request to speak to the committee when the committee calls for public comment. The public may also give written comment, which would have been due by Friday, February 9th at 3 o'clock and emailed to the clerk of MST. With that, let's go ahead and I will call this meeting to order and ask Carl to do roll call.
Jeanette, generally take the roll call.
Okay.
City of Carmel by the Sea,
Here.
City of King, City of Marina,
Here.
City of Pacific Grove,
Here.
City of Sand City,
Here.
and City of Salinas. So we have 4 present. Do we have a quorum?
You have a form.
Okay. With that, I will go ahead and move this to public comments on matters not appearing on the agenda. So members of the public may address the committee on the items related to the jurisdiction of MST at this time, but not on the agenda. There's a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and the committee will not take action or respond immediately to any public comments presented that may choose to follow up at a later time, either individually through staff or through a subsequent agenda. So at this time, I will go ahead and open public comment.
We do not see anyone online, nor do we have anyone appearing here in person.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. 3.1, and the consent agenda is to approve minutes of the Board of Operations Performance Committee on October 13th, 2023. And if the directors have any comments or corrections to those minutes, you can find them on page 5.
Well, I have a question about this no-show memorandum.
And this is on the minutes?
Oh, sorry. No, never mind.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Mistake.
Directors, any further comments? Okay, and if not, I'll open it up to the public at this time. Public comment is open.
There appears to be no one in here in person or online.
With that, we'll close public comment. And looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
No second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please say
Aye.
aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries. We'll go ahead and move on to action items, item 4, and this is a review of operations performance, and this item is Carl.
Yes, well, I actually have Michelle Overmeyer. Is this I'm sorry, I lost my place in the agenda here. Are we just going over
4-1.
4-1? Oh, just refer to the board report. Yeah, thank you. So if you look at the board report, our monthly report, you can see that we have continued month after month growth, even on top of the Better Bus Network. The Better Bus Network was implemented in December of 2022, and you'll receive a full report on our on that performance later in the agenda. But we saw an immediate 20% plus growth month after month, and then for December of 2023, our performance is even growing on top of that. So that's something staff was interested to seeing. Was that going to be a one-time growth in ridership, or are we sustaining our growth? So that's a good thing. As far as I think one of the things that's been important to this board, and I'll take a moment to announce at the full board meeting as well, has been our inability to implement the full Better Bus Network due to a lack of drivers. We had a very successful and fun event out at the bus driver skill course that got some television play and a full page article in the weekly. And we received, we had about 10 or 12 interviews lined up. Prior to that, we had another 30 people show up in the days following that. And we're on track to start a class of 24 coach operators tomorrow, which is giving us a good problem to have. It's stretching our abilities, but that will be the largest single class that I'm aware of ever in the history of MST. I know it's the largest single class in my 24 years here, and I can't imagine there having been a larger class prior to that. So that's great work on part of our HR operations, safety and training, our civil rights folks and group that handle the drug testing. We made a lot of changes. And so with that, we'll be able to not only fully implement the Better Bus Network as adopted, but to add additional service. We're having, particularly on our line 20, which is the surf line, our Better Bus Network is built on the ability to make quick transfers at our transfer centers, and there's a 5-minute window. Due to just growing and intense traffic along Highway 1, we are now missing about 20% of those transfer windows, and passengers are having to wait a half an hour to make that transfer rather than making a 5-minute transfer. They now have a half-hour wait if they're unlucky to be on that, which is the reason why the surf will be such an important piece of infrastructure to put in, because that'll help us bypass the unreliability of Highway 1. In order in the short term to fix that, with these extra drivers, we'll be able to add additional trips into the line 20 so that we'll have more buses going through there that passengers will be able to choose from, making those connection points. So that has been one of the challenges. We continue to have our very productive service. Our passenger boardings are increasing at a rate faster than we're adding service. So that means the buses are more full. I wouldn't say they're over full, but we're at full capacity in many parts of the day on our highest capacity routes. So those are all good things to report as far as our ridership on-time performance is still doing well. You'll notice in the report on the MST rides program, they are also at full employment or very close to full employment. And so you'll see their on-time performance for our rides customers has increased as well. And we were struggling with that earlier, say last summer. I don't want to say earlier in the year because we're only 2 months into the year. So earlier in the fiscal year or over the summer months, we had been struggling with our on-time performance specifically in rides, but that's been improving as well. With that, you do have a full monthly report. I don't want to go through the whole thing with you, but those are kind of the highlights, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carol. Directors, any questions for this time?
I would like to congratulate the awesome results of that day.
Oh,
It's not even a day, a couple of hours.
Yeah.
That resulted in so much publicity. And
You're the only one
so
here
many
that-
candidates.
yeah,
Am I the only one?
I think, yeah.
And I'll be happy to do it again if it helps.
It was a very fun event and worked out well beyond the wildest our anticipation for that. And it really was the board members. We had, I believe, 5 board members ended up being able to go. I think we had 6 initially indicate yes, and then we ended up with 5 there. And frankly, that's what drove the press there. So your board's presence was what brought the media out to that event. Frankly, I asked Felix Cortez and David Schmaltz, how would you like to come out and see some elected officials embarrass themselves on a driving course? And they said, absolutely. And that's what brought them out. And then they got behind the wheel themselves, at least David Schmaltz did. So we got 3 minutes on the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then the next morning, 7 o'clock news. And then we got a full page article in the weekly. I had our ad people that we contract with calculate the value. So that was over, if that was paid, that would have been over $10,000 investment in local media buys that we got for free. And it just, cost us, I think, 4 pizzas.
And a couple of cones.
Yeah, we did have to replace a few cones. That is true. But our general counsel was out there as well. So that, yeah.
Only slightly embarrassing myself.
So anyway, it all went well. So that concludes my report for the month.
So that's some great news, and maybe we should do that again. I believe your best voter was the Salinas spread.
Tony Barrera of the elected officials, yes, was the top contender.
Top contender.
I think so, yeah. He'll tell you.
Yeah,
And you did well.
I did okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything.
But it was.
Nothing that the big I'm #1 poster in my office doesn't erase.
Yeah, I unfortunately had another meeting, so I couldn't make it.
Well, we'll get you out there, and you still have the vice chair, the honor of being the board member who can wrangle a jackhammer the best.
yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Mary Ann Carbone had a groundbreaking act, took the jackhammer and operated it quite well. Very impressive.
Dude, that was due to my past experience, work experience, so. Okay, with that, thank you. No other comments on this. We'll open it up to the public. Public comment is open.
I don't see anyone online and no one in the audience.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and board will just receive this update.
Correct.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the next item, and I believe Lisa has this one. It's to receive update on the SURF project.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Lisa Reinheimer, Assistant General Manager for MST. You can refer to board item 5-1 in your regular packet. But this will be a reoccurring monthly update to the board as we kick the SURF project into high gear. And I'll go through some of those details in my report today. So the board will be asked to authorize your general manager, CEO, to execute a long-term lease agreement with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, or TAMC, for use of the Monterey branch line for the surf bus operations and also for construction. And I'll go through some of those details here in a minute. Some of the progress that I did want to report to you on is that the Federal Transit Administration approved a letter of no prejudice last month, which allows MST to procure some certain long lead time items for the project. There are advantages to ordering things like steel right now that would support retaining walls. Also, scheduling longer grow periods for trees and plants through the local nurseries here, because there are quite a few trees we need to get for the project to replace. And then that would also cover some of the construction management oversight services that your board had authorized to proceed with in December. So that's the contractor who will basically oversee the contractor while doing construction. So we need to have an arm of MST to have that expertise to make sure the contractor is getting the quantities, building the project correctly. So it's an oversight role for them. So part of that letter of no prejudice will help to pay for that. And I had reported that the contract execution for that work was pending. It has now been executed as of this morning, so I'm happy to report on that. I'm going to move on to community outreach. We have been doing a considerable amount and will continue to this year as we gear up for a construction start of this fall. I was at Marina Farmers Market in early January. We've been at Monterey Peninsula College. We had a pop-up site visit on Saturday at the 5th Street Station. I'll explain why in a minute, but we had about 15 or so members of the public, 15 to 20, plus the MST and consultant staff. So I think it was a really good event, as long as you brought your walking shoes, because there was a considerable amount of traipsing around the site and looking at the elevations and the trees. And luckily, I didn't hear of any tick problems, so that was good. And it was open to the public as part of a pop-up due to a tree committee hearing that we had, that the city of Marina had in January, where the committee members asked us to go back and take a look at the project and see if we could reduce the number of trees. We had originally thought we needed 123 trees to be removed. We reduced that after looking at more specific and advanced grading plans, and reduced it down to 92 and presented that to the tree committee in Marina. They said, why can't we do a few more? Let's see what we can do here. And so we hosted this pop-up at 5th Street Station because that's the majority of the trees that need to be removed to be able to fully utilize that property. It's 4.5 acres. We're putting in a park and ride facility. It's a bigger transit station as part of the SURF, as well as a pickup and drop-off area and bicycle repair station. So we hosted that. I thought it was really good, answered questions. We also had a table at Farmers Market last week. Carl, you had attended that. Vince, our project management coordinators, reported to me this morning there were about 10 to 15 people that showed up. So not as heavily utilized as some of our other events, but still important to be out there in the community and, you know, talking about the project, getting that excitement continue to proceed as we get to construction. Okay, let's keep going here. We've had some jurisdictional meetings. We're going to try to get some additional ones to help out with the permits. So we're gearing up for 38 permits that we need to get through the jurisdictions, through Caltrans, through the Coastal Commission, through you name it. We have 7 complete. So we have quite a few to go. And most of those permits rely on the review of the 95% design milestone. And so once those reviews are complete and we're able to submit more final plans, then the city's can issue their grading permits, building permits, encroachment permits, you name it. So a lot of stuff going on there. We're also working with TMC on that funding agreement I mentioned earlier on. That'll be for long-term use of the rail line as well as construction. We need to have a construction staging area. So we're working with TMC to utilize their property to the north of us at the 5th Street Station to do so. Some of the key provisions of that long-term use agreement is that obviously MST can construct and use the facility for a long period of time tied to the useful life of the federal investment. Let's see. We also agree that the corridor itself will be protected for future rail use, should that come about in the future. We have 100 feet total of width in that corridor. We're using about 1/3 of that, so the remainder can be used for future rail should that become a reality in our region. I also included the budget and the schedule in attachments as part of that item, but I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. And just know that you'll get these updates regularly as we get to putting those golden shovels in the ground and do that groundbreaking.
Any questions or comments?
Just one comment. Thank you, Lisa, for your report, and I'm just happy that it seems to be going well, this project. And so you'll be back at the farmers market in Marina on Sunday, the 25th.
Yes,
I'll try to give it more publicity, try to get more people to come.
sure.
Yeah.
We're also translating those letters of support. The one thing I didn't mention is our coastal development permit. I kind of glossed over that, but that's a big push right now. We have one last submittal to them. This is our 4th submittal to them. And, we're hoping that that last submittal is all that they need. We've exhausted our data that we can provide to them. So I don't know what more they could ask of us at this point. We just need to get to the Coastal Commission's agenda to, have a decision on the project.
And you have forms that people can sign
Yes.
to support.
That's what So we have an English one, we have a Spanish one. We need to get some additional, we looked at the languages that are in Marina. Tagalog, Korean, Vietnamese are the 3 other languages that have, more than 200 people.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Lisa, so you're doing outreach at the Marina and Seaside Farmers Market and the college. Is there anywhere you could do anything over near Sand City?
Absolutely. Did you have something in mind?
We'll have to think of a
You have your
spot.
first Friday event.
Yeah, the first Friday.
Is that the Sand City Night Market?
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
we've been to that one before and we can certainly put that on our schedule. Absolutely. And we've been to West End too, although that's only an annual event.
Mhm.
But if you think of any that you'd like us to be at, let us
Okay.
know. We're happy to do so.
All right. Okay, anyone else? And if not, go ahead and thank you, Lisa. We'll
you.
open it up to the public comment.
There are no members of the public online, and I see no members of the public in the board chambers.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation, and with that, the action we'll take is to receive the update. And we will move on to the next item 4.3, and this is to receive inactive bus stop removal policy. And Michelle will give us this report. Thank you.
Morning, committee members, Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation. My staff report is on page 79 of the full agenda package. So this item will be going to the full board this morning. So MST's fixed route service allows passengers to board and alight the bus at designated bus stops. Our service area has changed dramatically since 2019, and there are a number of locations that we no longer serve, such as areas along Highway 1 going down to Big Sur and along Highway 68 between here and Salinas. So the past practice has been to just leave the pole in place and remove the flag or the signage at the top. And leave the pole in place in case we need to restore service sometime in the future. This allows us to quickly reestablish service if we need to make any adjustments and just return the signage without having to do these costly upgrades for Americans with Disabilities Act compliance. So as you'll recall, we conducted the comprehensive operational analysis between 2021 and 2022. We redesigned our service for the Better Bus Network, which you'll hear about after this item. And we now have a number of inactive bus stops in the service area. We're getting requests to have our stuff removed completely, the poles, shelters, benches. We've had these requests come in from board members, and we've also had them come in from adjacent property owners. And at this time, we have no policy right now to guide staff as these requests come in. So a cross-departmental team here has reviewed the issue, and we drafted the policy that is on page 81 of the full agenda package. And it provides a standardized process for reviewing these requests to permanently remove inactive bus stops. So this will consist of an objective approach to determine when to permanently remove these bus stops. So some of the highlights of this policy, all jurisdictions must submit the request in writing, and it should be consistent with their general plans and circulation elements. And the local jurisdiction will acknowledge their responsibility to reimburse MST for our efforts, waive any related fees like encroachment permit fees to do the work, and then cover any expenses in the future if the bus stop does need to go back in. So this means that MST staff will not entertain requests coming from individual members of the public or private property owners, but the request should come in from the cities. Your cities must be willing to waive these encroachment permit fees for the removal and commit to providing those future ADA requirements should the bus stop need to be reinstalled. So MST staff would evaluate things like safety and liability for MST employees and customers if we do remove the stop, past usage, the utility of stop for other special events that we might have in the future, and the proximity to land uses that might generate the need for a bus stop in the future. Staff will provide the MST board or its designee with its recommendation to approve or deny the request. Staff's evaluation of the request will include an analysis of any negative impacts to low-income and minority populations. Any approval of a permanent bus stop removal would be via an adopted board resolution. And this would note that future reinstallation would be billed 100% to the local jurisdiction. So this is on the full board's agenda for approval today. And at this time, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Directors, any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you for this. I know that we had one from a property owner that I carried the water for. I assume that's what you're talking about, but
That was one we had.
I'd like to emphasize that, I carried the water for that. So that's not the property, it wasn't really a request from the property owner. It was a request from the city. So I definitely agree with, the idea that these things should come from the city, but I'm a little stuck on a couple of, first a question, what does it mean reimburse MST? So if, what does that mean? Like reimburse MST the costs that MST incurs to go out and collect the bench that's MST's bench? Is that what we're talking about?
There's
cost
that.
of removal?
Cost of removal or cost of reinstallation.
Well, let's talk about the cost of removal.
Cost of removal
Let's
would be
talk
our
about
staff time and
Paint.
paint. We have to repaint the curbs. So labor and supplies, time, I guess we call time and materials would be probably the contractual language.
Okay. And then who pays on the cost for the cost of reinstallation? Like, you know, when we did the Better Bus Network, were there some bus stops that we had to install? So who paid for the cost to install those bus stops? Like who paid that cost?
Say for the most part, MST did. There is an area of East Garrison where we're trying to get reimbursed from the HOA as part of their obligation under their CCNRs.
Right.
But that was an MST led effort, so we paid for that from our capital budget.
And we did seek a special grant in Seaside. Seaside had committed to implementing or paying for a stop, then they removed it from their budget. And then we were able to seek a grant from TAMC. And that's taken 2 years for us to go through the process of installing that stop in Seaside. And are we there yet?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's going to be active within the next week or two.
Okay, so.
But to give you some scale, that stop that Carl's talking about was about $80,000 to extend the curb so that it meets ADA standard in an existing neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll save my comments. I mean, those are my questions, but
Yeah.
I have some comments for when we're to that point.
I have a question. So just, how many, bus stops are we talking about? Approximately, ballpark figure.
We've been operating for 50 years, so we have a lot of stops in the service area. We have about 900 that are active right now, and we have several hundred that are inactive.
Inactive. Okay, in the, several hundred, in other words, if they have to be removed, for example, let's just pick City of Pacific Grove, they have to remove some there. The City of Pacific Grove, just will go off Jeff's comment here, would have to pay for the removal?
If you're requesting it, that's what we're asking, that MST would get reimbursed for the cost.
Are you removing anything from City of Pacific Grove?
We haven't had any requests come in from the city.
Pardon me?
We haven't had any requests come in from the city.
Okay.
And we've had requests come in from other cities where they want us to pay them for the paint, from the red to the gray paint, and pay for their staff and pay for,
Not mine, I hope.
No.
Okay.
not anyone at this table.
No.
That's why I felt comfortable. I felt I was in a safe space right now, but.
We're
it
getting
has-
ready for next hour.
It has happened, and so we feel, rather than stop by stop, how well we can negotiate each stop with each city, we thought, well, let's come up with a policy to handle this in the future so that we know how to do this consistently, stop by stop, city by city. So because the requests have been increasing at an increasing rate of frequency. There've been more and more coming in from all over.
Thanks for the report. I just have another
Oh.
question.
Kelly has a comment.
Oh,
If Chair, she may.
Yes, sorry.
Kelly Halkin, Director of Human Resources and Risk. We have typically left these stops inactive because many of them are not within ADA compliance, but were grandfathered in. When you remove them, that grandfather clause goes away. And so if we were to have to reinstall it, then it would have to be made ADA compliant, which is the biggest cost associated with re-inputting those stops in. So for us, we've always operated the fact of just leaving it active because then we save that grandfather clause. And then it's easier to reactivate a stop versus having to pull it all out and then put it back in.
Michelle, thank you, Kelly. Michelle, so in regards to transparency, I'm just curious, how does the cities or the counties, are they familiar with this policy? Or we haven't established it yet?
We don't have a policy right now, so this is being put forward to the full board today for adoption.
So we have a planning document called Designing for Transit that we share with all the cities. This would obviously go into that document, would be one of the first things, but we meet with planning directors through AMBAG, and we have regular meetings. So if the board were to adopt this, we would communicate back to the cities and let them know this is how MST will be processing requests to remove stops.
Thank you.
Yes, I really like that, the requests need to come from the cities. And that there will be an analysis, because I only know of one example in Marina that I was happy to see that there already was a pole at a location that I thought, oh, that would be good for a bus stop here. And guess what? The pole was already there. There had been a bus stop in the past, long before I moved here. So I think we need to be very careful with removing bus stops at locations that might need to be added in the future. And I do think it's correct to let the cities pay for that if they choose to have it removed, and then in the future it needs to be reinstalled. I also can understand that some cities will say, hey, why do we need to pay to have your stuff removed out of our city? That's not being used anymore. So it will be interesting to hear the full word on that. I definitely understand, if the city chooses to have it taken out, regardless of who pays. And if it then needs to be reinstalled, then it's for the city to pay. But the removal, I'm not too sure about that one. So, yeah.
Thank you. I have a question and a comment. So the question is, how many cities are, I see that there has been request, and that was more due to cities wanting to add parking in those spaces. So what has there been a percent of request already for parking? That's what's in the staff report. That here it says so that they could return bus stop, remove inactive bus stops so they could return to public areas for on-street parking. So any requests, has that been brought up?
Yeah, I'm going to say virtually 100% of the requests are for parking. Is that a fair statement, Michelle? I'm just going.
Minus mine.
Minus yours. That's why I said virtually.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there have been requests, and it's due to parking.
Usually it's, there's a red curb, a pole. And someone wants that removed from the front of either in front of a business, or from in front of a residence.
And if there's no bus, so there's no bus going there now, why don't they just, this jurisdictions just paint the curb and that be it? Paint it gray.
So we try to keep the red curb in case we need to reactivate the stop, because going back to the cities and asking for a red curb is quite a process, and can take a while.
Yeah. In, again, virtually all jurisdictions, once, and that is why we've had the decades-long practice of just keeping it, because they're so hard to get the red curb or an encroachment permit along Highway 1 for in the Big Sur area. There's we had been operating line 22 for a couple of decades, I think, and in the mail, we got an encroachment permit that had taken Caltrans like 10 years to process that. And we had already been operating the service, didn't realize it because it was well before my time this had happened. And I just assumed we had everything in place. So that's the extreme, but it takes a lot of time to get through parking commissions, traffic commissions, whatever your cities are. And frankly, they don't often have a bent towards transit. It's difficult for us to get that. So we like to hold on to it if we can.
Okay, and then are there bus stops? Are these inactive bus stops still being maintained? Are they like shelters? So does MST go up there and? So if there is a bus shelter there, is MST just leaving those, or are they taking care of it even though they're inactive, or are they just signs, bus stop signs?
For the most part, it's poles.
Okay.
I think we've removed the shelters at most locations that are inactive because they're wanted in other areas where we have service.
Okay. And that's my last question. It was, if those shelters are removed, can they be reused, or are they just like no debris, you know?
If they can be reused, we will reuse them. Sometimes they're pretty beat up by that time and we don't reuse them, but in most cases, we will find a home for them. We don't have shelters everywhere where they need to go, but again, that also is also a permitting process with the cities, getting the shelter in place and the encroachment permit and everything else. It's street furniture. That whole infrastructure around the stop can be, take a lot of time and effort. And in some cases, it takes years. In some of our South County cities, we're still struggling with the better bus network to install stops. In Seaside, it's been a 2-year process to put in a stop. So in Carmel by the Sea, we got actually relatively quickly.
Yep.
It was a matter of, a few months, but in the scheme
The
of things,
quality of Carmel's representation.
it could very well be. You're here at the meeting, so.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, we'll move, I'll take it out to the public. So let's open public comment. Public comment is open.
No public comment either online or in public, and we'll be bringing this back to the full board.
Well, I have some comments.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
I have some comments on a couple of things. First, my sort of general comment on the ADA compliances. My city, and I'm sure every city, has a sort of an ADA compliance program. So every year in our budget, there's a couple tens of thousands of dollars to bring our curbs into compliance with the ADA. And I have to say that, as a public agency, I think that our goal here should be to bring our stops in compliance with the ADA. And so I have an issue, with keeping stops around because otherwise we wouldn't be allowed to be in violation of the ADA. So I have a pretty significant issue with that. And I'm not there. So I think that the policy, for me to support it, the policy would need to recognize that, this policy or another policy within MST would need to recognize that over the course of the next, decades, however, whatever our time frame is, all of our bus stops should be in ADA compliance. And if they're not, then we should have them. Like, I don't want to, we just shouldn't have bus stops that aren't ADA compliant. At some point in the future, we should be at that point. Just like at some point in the future, we will be using alternative fuel vehicles. So it doesn't need to be tomorrow, but we need to have a goal, and we need to not keep bus stops around for that reason. So I have a pretty significant issue with that being used as a reason. On the other hand, the comments that bus stops are hard to get and the red paint, just to use that, is hard to get, that really rings true to me. And so I'm a little stuck because it feels like the organization is going through, the organization is trying to have everything around the bus stop when all we really want is the hardest thing to get is the red paint. Right, the hardest thing to get is to get through the city. So as a consequence of not being able to get the red paint, in a timely fashion, whether it's from Caltrans or Seaside or Carmel or whatever, we're just gonna hoard this property, and that's my word, not you, not that's not MST's word. And I feel like
far off.
and I feel like that there is a better solution than just hoarding the property, and I feel like. One thing we could do is, one thing we might be able to do is sort of enter into the jurisdictions with some sort of agreement to sort of lease the bus stop back to them, permanently lease the bus stop back to them, and have them as I think it was Marianne that said paint the curb gray. Can we just temporarily paint the curb gray and then revert it back to red? Can we have some agreement with the jurisdiction that, yeah, we'll paint the curb gray for you for for however long, but we reserve the right without going through your process again to just have red paint, to just revert it to red. So I'd like to see some sort of back and forth. And I know that this is difficult, but if we sort of alter the policy to, to sort of allow for this sort of agreement, we could just say yes, and we could remove our stuff and, but leave the pole. If it's the pole that signifies that this is a bus stop, that there was once a bus stop there, it's important to do that. But maybe we could like meet the jurisdictions halfway and give them their parking. And this is coming from me. Like, I would be happy if we didn't have any public parking spaces at all and everybody used public transport. Like, I would honestly be happy with that. But that's not the reality of the communities where these bus stops are when they're clamoring for a couple of parking spots. And so it doesn't feel like this is really sensitive to that. And I would like it to be, I think we might make an effort to be a little more sensitive, to the community's needs, and see if we can find a compromise. And then Joe brought up the idea of cost, and I actually asked a question for the cost. So I am fine with requiring that, if we have to paint the curb to accommodate the city, then I'm fine being reimbursed for that. But I think that once the bus stop is gone, the bus stop is gone. And we should not necessarily put a city on the hook for the cost of reinstalling a bus stop if they take us back. I mean, if they take it back, like, that's why I asked a question before about who pays for a new bus stop. And once the bus stop is gone, the bus stop is gone and everything's a new bus stop. Like, once we give it up, like if we release all of our title and we release our encroachment permit on it, then it's just gone. But I don't think that that's, I think if we find the gray curb spot solution, that I don't think we'll be doing a lot of that.
If I could add on to that,
Mhm.
if we were to go in that direction or recommend something to the board, or, to go to the full board with that. Cities also do put in parking meters, and they also paint or stripe, so there'd probably be a little bit further, more language that you would want to add to what Jeff's.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know how we don't have parking meters for that. Also baffles me. So don't get me started on that. But I don't know. However, I agree with that.
So may I respond to some of
Yes.
so I agree that, and Lisa, as keeper of the capital improvement plan, that it would be appropriate for us to, identify what is our total ADA responsibility. I mean, I will hazard the guess that's in the millions of dollars. And we'll just have to, that is something we would want to identify in our capital improvement plan, just like replacement buses, just like, and that's just part of our infrastructure that we need to, plan for.
If I may,
Yeah.
A bus stop that's removed, though, like
Right.
I'm not sure that a bus stop that a city is asked to be removed is no longer used really belongs in the capital improvement project. So that there's a
Understood. I'm just saying
thing there.
Active bus stops that are not ADA compliant. What do we have in inventory today of the,
That's right.
900 some active bus stops, not counting the 200 or so inactive bus stops. Of the 900 active bus stops, how many are ADA compliant? And we need to make a decision as far as a board on how much we spend each year on that, how aggressive we are once we see the price tag. I think it'll be a very high price tag and a very long term, based on the sample size of one stop in Seaside recently, it was a 2-year process to get it funded and built. So that could be, multiplied many times over. So we'll have to get our head wrapped around that. But I agree that should be a goal of this district, is to eventually get to 100% wheelchair accessible stops. But it's just, where is that funding coming from? It might be interesting to know as we look towards an extension of Measure Q or some new funding measure to have that number underneath our belt, because we, may want to see if the public is interested in funding that. So I agree with that. And the comment of, once a bus stop is gone, we've had in some cities, particularly in South County cities, just depending on the city manager. I want this bus stop gone, I want it here, I want it there, and we're ping-ponging back and forth. So we'll agree to a plan, and then someone new comes in and they don't agree with the plan that we agreed to under the last council or the last administration. And so, and again, it's staff is just trying, I think we need to put some mark down to say, okay, this is it. We just can't be coming in, pulling in, putting back in and out, in and out. It becomes a burden to MST financially and administratively.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I think so. Those are very valid concerns.
Right.
And my response my sort of callous response as a representative from not one of those cities would be that, MST and the cities are in the business of providing transportation to their citizens. And if the cities are going to be pains about it and not allowing bus stops, there's a limit. Like, I would back you up. I mean, I would certainly back up MST staff. I mean, there's a limit in terms of, now this is going to sound so callous, how much we should care. I mean, I don't know, like, what do you do? Like, what, when you're faced with, political opposition or institutional or administrative opposition to try and help the citizens of those communities, like, how do you navigate that? And I don't.
Yeah, this may be coming to your board sooner than you know with one particular city as we implement the South County circulators. So there's one city that is just not playing well in the sandbox. And if all the other cities are ready to go, and this one city has been, not participating, staff may be coming back to your board to say, we're just not going to serve in the city with our circulators, and they won't have the same level of service as other cities. So, that may come back to you in the next 6 months.
Joe?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mary Ann. I was listening to Jeff's comments and Carl's comments there, and I asked the question, ballpark figure, right? How many bus stops are we talking about? Whether it's on Highway 1 or whatever. But do you have a list of bus stops that have to be jetted out?
Been looking into this as the requests come in.
No. Okay.
We had a large request come in before the holidays. One city had asked for over 40 stops to be removed in their city. So it's just as the request comes in.
We don't, City of Pacific Grove doesn't have 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither do we. That's what I was going to say.
But
We're all looking at Mary Ann.
You probably don't want to say, but 40 bus stops sounds like City of Salinas.
It was not City of Salinas.
Okay. Since Tony's not here, I could say that. No, okay.
Stop, Joe. Don't ask.
Yeah. Well, I know Jeff, City of Pacific Grove doesn't have 40.
So this committee, while we're at this committee, I think staff needs some guidance here. Do you want us to pull this ask this item to be pulled from the full agenda and come back for further consideration and come back before this committee? Or do you think we should have this discussion at the full committee and have the committee just say, come back later with more information? Because it doesn't sound like we're there yet. I'm not getting a sense that, at least from this committee, that we're ready to move this forward as presented. Or do you want to hear more from the rest of the board? Maybe we are, but I don't want this to be a contentious issue. I'd like it to be.
Why don't?
Yeah.
Just one of the things addressing board member Barron's comments. about an agreement with the jurisdiction. There is baked into the policy a requirement for an agreement. The last line, any approval will include an agreement between MSD and the jurisdiction. And that agreement is aimed right now to affirming the reinstallation cost to be billed. But in that, it's also inferred that it would reserve MSD's right to put that bus stop back in. So now I know that was one of your comments. We could amend that agreement to say that, you know, an agreement between MSD and the jurisdiction reserving MSD's right to install a stop at that location and possibly affirming the reinstallation cost, which I know is kind of a sticking point right now, but we'd want further direction on that. So just wanted to raise that to the committee's attention, that there is baked into the policy already the need and ability to have an agreement with the jurisdiction that can reserve bus stop rights going forward.
You know, to your point, I mean, I think and I only speak for myself. I mean, I think, you know, we're the operations committee, and I think we have more of a say than the big committee. Like, this is part of our job. And so normally I would say no, like, let's pull it from the agenda, and let's just like do a little more work on it, and we'll see it again in a couple months. I mean, I think you've gotten pretty good feedback on it and all that. The thing that is sort of causing me to not want to take that road right now is the ability to have a board conversation on the ADA issue. And I think that having that conversation, I think that, you know, if this agenda item is a way to sort of sneak that sort of start that conversation with the board, I think that's an important issue with the board. And so for that reason, I would say maybe we should just, hopefully it won't be too long a conversation.
Carl?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, not that I'm keeping track of time, but we've been discussing this for probably close to 14 minutes.
Right.
And if we had the whole board together, nothing to get along with everybody, I don't have any problem with that, but it could go on forever.
Yeah, Joe's right.
Yeah,
Let's just pull it.
I think
Joe's
that's
right.
the best way.
Let's just pull it.
Okay.
That would be I think Joe's right.
Yes, I can ask, could it be a separate agenda item in the future? Because I do agree with you about the ADA, just separate from the inactive bus stops. If we have active bus stops that are not ADA compliant.
So Carl, we can put that on under as a separate item
Well,
for the ADA in the future.
Yeah, we would come back and I think we would have to, it may be part of the capital budget process and have the discussion there. That's what I'm hearing. Staff would have to do some, you know, it would be, we'd have to probably hire a consultant to come in and do an evaluation of every stop. So it's gonna take some time for us to put that number together and understand the exact magnitude of this, but it's going to be, you know, I'll tell you, it's going to be very large. And I think that's why we've frankly been hoarding stops, but maybe it's a time to stop that, you know, and just face the responsibility and move forward. I can get that. We do have, I don't know how quick Emma can do her presentation, but I don't know that it's in 2 minutes.
So there's a grant that we're going to pull this
Yes.
item because there's a lot that you're gonna have to work on. Looking at an agreement with the jurisdictions as well. Okay, well, so let's move on to item four, and Michelle, we have 2 minutes.
Sure. So we have a presentation on the first year of the Better Bus Network. We'll try to go through it in 2 minutes. Quickly, we do plan to come back to the full board next month with more analysis because we haven't had a whole lot of time to digest the December data. Next slide, please. So the Better Bus Network, I think you all were pretty involved through the whole process, maybe except for Director Vischer. You missed those long detailed meetings with the consultant, but we ended up redesigning the system. We're focused on ridership over coverage, equity over equality, and a regional balance of service. And so Emma Patel, our planning manager, is going to go through some of the highlights of the first year.
Next slide, please. Tried, I got this done in 1 minute.
So in the first year of the Better Bus Network, so from December 10th, 2022 to December 9th, 2023, we've seen an increase in ridership by over 25%, and we've served more than 2 million passengers. The most popular routes are lines 41, 20, and Jazz B. The most popular boarding locations are Monterey Transit Plaza, Sand City Station, and Salinas Transit Center. Outside of the transit centers, Northridge Mall, Cannery Row, and Fremont Ord Grove are the most popular locations. Next slide, please. So taking a look at how some of the trips have changed from pre-Better Bus Network to current, from Monterey to Carmel Valley, previously that was a one vehicle trip that took about 49 minutes on line 24. Now you would take line 5 and transfer to line 24, which takes 55 minutes. However, pre-BBN on-time performance for line 24 was always below the 75% minimum standard, and post-BBN, it's been over 75% for 10 out of 12 months. Previously, Sand City to Carmel was a one vehicle trip that took 40 minutes on line 11. Now you would take Jazz A and transfer to line 5, which takes 47 minutes. However, line 11 had 3 morning trips and 3 evening trips that were spaced about 70 minutes apart. And with the new routing, there's consistent service throughout the day, half hourly. From South County to Hartnell, previously it was a one vehicle trip on line 23, whereas now you would take line 23 to the Salinas Transit Center and then take either line 20 or walk to campus, which does end up saving you 10 minutes, but there isn't direct service to Hartnell. Next slide. So line 1 in the first year of the Better Bus Network, ridership has increased by 15%, and the most popular boarding and alighting location is the Monterey Transit Plaza. Next slide, please. Line 24 ridership has decreased by 63% compared to pre-BBN. However, the routing along this line has changed pretty significantly. Instead of beginning at Monterey Transit Plaza, which was previously the most popular boarding location, line 24 now begins at Carmel Rancho, and line 5 begins at MTP. If you combine the ridership of line 5 and 24, ridership has increased by over 100% compared to the old line 24. Next slide, please. On line 20, ridership has increased by 36%, and the most popular boarding and alighting location is STC. Next slide, please. So the South County circulators are set to replace on-call service. Line 34, the King City circulator replaced King City on-call service at the start of the BBN, and it's the first South County circulator to be implemented. It's had over 5,000 passengers in the first year. Soledad and Gonzales circulators are almost at final design and should be the next circulators to be implemented. Overall, South County on-call and circulator boardings have decreased by 4%. Gonzales and King City on-call and circulator ridership saw a decrease in ridership. However, overall ridership in King City has increased. Soledad and Greenfield both saw increases in on-call and fixed route service. Next slide, please. In the first year of the BBN, there were 520 canceled trips, which equates to only about 0.2% of scheduled trips being canceled. Almost half of these trips were canceled due to driver shortages, and line 43 had the most cancellations with about 6 cancellations per month. Every other route had fewer than 4 canceled trips a month on average. Next slide, please. Since the BBN, passengers can enjoy 2 hours on MST services for the price of a single ticket. Passengers must request a transfer when they first board the bus, and it's good for the next 2 hours. 19% of boardings were made using transfers, which is about 34,000 boardings per month. Lines 20, 41, 49, and Jazz A and B had the highest transfer usage. Next slide, please. Contactless boarding is also up a lot. Over 119,000 boardings have been made using contactless tap to pay in the first year of the Better Bus Network. The prior year had just under 60,000 contactless boardings, which is an increase of about 101%. Lines 25, 41, 23, and Jazz A and B have the highest usage of tap to pay. About 37% of unique riders hit some sort of cap each month, and that's about 23% of trip each month. Next slide, please. In October of 2022, MST partnered with Commute with Enterprise to offer vanpool services. There have been over 58,000 vanpool passengers in 2023. In December, there were 23 van pools, which is the same number of van pools that we had when we started in October of 2022. The number of van pools running changes each month and varies slightly. There's usually 20 to 23 van pools. About 43% of the trips take place in the Monterey area, followed by San Jose and Salinas. And that's all we have. We can answer any questions.
Any questions? Absolutely. Thank you for your presentation. We'll open this up to the public.
There are no public comments and no one in the room to making comment.
With that, thank you for your presentation and we'll
Oh,
close-
hold on, we do have some hands
Okay.
raised. Lawrence
Awesome,
Walker.
too.
So can we
Okay.
unmute Lawrence Walker?
Hello,
Hello, Lawrence.
hello. I just wanted to make a public comment.
Is this regarding our presentation on the Better Bus Network?
No, it isn't.
Okay, then we'll wait for the beginning of with our apologies, our operations committee meeting is running a bit late. And we'll be starting the MST board meeting shortly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to comment on the operations committee presentation? Okay, hearing none. There is, 1705. Please unmute 1705.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good morning, Board of Directors. I have a comment. They are not telling you the truth. The ridership has not improved. For the last 24 years, I have taken bus line 24. And now it's just as empty as it was before. I have to go to Carmel Valley. I take the bus back at 6 o'clock at night. I'm usually the only one on it, or maybe one other person that's, going to the village. They've made it so inconvenient now that you take the 5 and then that takes you through Carmel on a very noisy bus. And time consuming. You go through Carmel and then you have to change at the Rancho, and there's hardly anyone. There's like 2 or 3 people that change and go across the street and get on 24. And the ridership has not improved in all the years that I've taken it. It used to be better when they had it at the plaza, because a lot of people that were from the hotels would just go straight out there to the wineries for the wine tasting. Well, it's too inconvenient now. I mean, I'm urging you, board members, please take that line and understand the inconvenience that it is causing us when they could just have bus 24 at the plaza again. Now I have to drive to the Rancho, park my car, and then catch the bus from there to the Carmel Valley, because it's at 6 o'clock at night, it's freezing cold, and you don't want to wait there 20 minutes for the next bus, Carmel 5, to come and fetch you. And sometimes you have to wait longer because the buses aren't well coordinated. So it needs to change, and they've gotten Measure X money to do so, and they're refusing, the planners are refusing to change it, and they say it's impossible. And with all this money that they've gotten, the $28 million from TAMSI's Measure X, they're saying that they haven't gotten it. So where is that money going? It's up to you, directors, to look into this, because I, as a climate change activist, I want to do my part, but they've made it literally so uncomfortable for me that I can't do it. So thank you for listening, and please look into it, take that line, and see for yourself the ridership. Thank you.
And Kim,
This is Lorna Moffett.
okay, thank you. Thank you for the comment.
Are there any other comments on this item? Okay, I think we're through.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and there is no closed session. So we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting and we will, take a minute break.
1 minute
Ready
break.
For the next meeting.
We'll get the board seated for the regular meeting of the MST board meeting.